Guys, in this video I cover if-else-if conditions. I start out by going over the syntax of how to write if-else-if conditions, and then I go over one example where I use an integer that is between 0 and 100 and translate it into a letter grade. Let's start out with the syntax. So we start out with the if keyword followed in parentheses with a condition. Then we have a then block, and then in my other video I went over the else block. So we have something like this. Now with the if-else-if condition, all we're doing is adding another condition here, condition 2. What this will do is simply check the first condition. If it is true, it will execute code block 1. If it is false, it will check condition 2, and if condition 2 is true, it will execute code block 2. Now, if I don't have anything else, it would continue execution after this. What this simply means is it will execute only one of these code blocks, but only the code block where the condition is true. If none of the conditions are true, no code block here is executed. Now I can have as many as I want to. I could add a third condition here. Condition 3, check that as well, and have a third code block here. If I want to, I can also say else. This basically means if none of the conditions were true, this is my default. That's what I will do. If one of them was true, I don't execute the else block. So the else is really just if everything was false, then I do the statements in the else block. Now you can also leave these braces out to not declare the code block explicitly. It simply would allow you to write a single statement, but it's always a good habit to define the code block. Now let's start out with the example. I use the scanner to read in from system.in. I import the scanner class, and now I output a prompt. Please enter your score. And I declare a variable or float. Actually, yeah, I want to use float, named score, that uses the scanner to read in the next floating point value. So what I want to do is translate that score that is between 0 and 100. I can put this in here. And then translate it into a letter grade. So I declare another variable named letter, and this is simply a char. And now I use the if-else conditions. So first I check if the score is above 100. And then I output a statement, your score is too high. Please try again. So this is basically, I ignore everything that is above 100. Next, I use an else if condition, and that means if the score is not above 100, only then my condition here will be checked. So that is, at this point, I know my score has to be 100 or less than 100. And so I check if the score is larger or equal to 90. So even though I have a single condition, I know that the previous condition was already checked. So what this condition at this point really checks, if the score is between 90 and included 90 up until 100. And if that is the case, I make an assignment to the variable letter and assign a to it. Now I continue the same pattern with the other letter grades. I check if the score is larger or equal to 80. That means the letter grade will be a B. And I know here it's above or equal to 80, but I also know this statement will only be executed if all previous statements in my if-else-if block were false. It's not above 100, it's not above or equal to 0. So at this point, it has to be between 80 and 89.99999. I continue the same pattern, check if it's above or equal to 70. And in that case, I assign a C letter grade. Next, I check if it's above or equal to 60. In that case, I assign a D letter grade. And now I have the option, I could say everything else is an F, but that really means anything, even a negative value. What I could do as well, the other option is I check if it's above or equal to 0. In that case, I assign an F. Otherwise, I output a statement, your score is negative, please try again. So that covers my two boundaries here, the one above 100 and the else block here. I know that everything else was false. So at that point, I know it's below 0. That's basically the lower boundary. And then at the end, I output a statement. You achieved a grade of, and here I output the grade. Did I call it letter? Letter. Now here I get a compile error, and it says the local variable may not have been initialized. Now you should know what initialization means. It simply means that I declared a variable, but I did not assign an initial value. So what could happen here, that one of them, that all of these did not execute or did not assign a value. And if I look closely, I only assigned a value for these conditions here and the code blocks where it's a valid grade. When it was above 100 or below 0, I only outputted a statement, but I did not assign a default value. Now I could add another statement and initialize it here, maybe to a question mark. And I could do the same thing here. Now if I do something twice, whenever in programming you do something twice, what you want to kind of reconsider if you can make this simpler and reduce the code duplication. In this case, what I could do is, instead of writing the statement twice, I combine it with a declaration and say by default it's I don't know what the letter grade is, but if something valid comes up, I just use an assignment to replace the question mark with a valid grade. Now let's run our program and see how it works. Now I enter letter grade. Let me first try if I can achieve 200. The score is too high. Please try again. You achieved a grade of, I don't really know. Run this again, and let's try something 85. So here we can see you achieved a letter grade of B. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you for watching.